To start with our youngest, our baby, not so much of a baby, but baby in the committee, Surabi Kunj Dasi. She's a disciple of His Holiness Kadambakanda Swami Maharaj, and in matric, she was the fourth in the whole of KZN, so quite an academic achievement. And she carried that forward to University, and she graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science. And then after did her honors, and that too she got cum laude, which is distinctions. And she took that work at a company in Schlager, Dairy Flow, I think that's how it's pronounced, right? And she worked there for 3 years, but at this young age she took a break from being involved in the corporate world and wanted to be more involved in Krishna consciousness and her service. And now she's involved in book distribution, and she's with BYS, Bhakti Yoga Society on campus, as well as in the temple, the retreats, helping Rukmini. And she's involved in the production of the Guru Maharaj's books and making Krishna conscious videos amongst just being a wonderful, cheerful, and bubbly devotee, welcoming everybody. So thank you. Let's welcome Surabi. And I have to really take my hat off for Malika, who joined, became involved in Krishna consciousness from the time she was 12 years old. She's a disciple of His Holiness Giriya Swami. She joined the Sri Sri Radharanath when she was 18 years. She met His Holiness Bhakti Swami Maharaj at 12. And being influenced then, from then became very, very convinced about Krishna consciousness, being so steady from then in her services at the temple. And in the course of her joining, etc., she married another wonderful devotee, Swami Prabhu, has one son, Purush. And she's done many, many services, book distribution, lady service, cooking, dressing the ladies, counseling in the community, kirtan, house programs, given her life to Krishna consciousness. So, welcome to Malika. They don't tell you more about themselves as I go through that. We will also focus on one of our Namahata leaders, and there are many Namahata leaders, but today we're focusing on His Grace Rupa Vilas. Rupa Vilas, he's a disciple of His Holiness Bhakti Das Goswami Maharaj. In his work, he's a stock manager at the Premier Foods Company. He manages 3 depots, which is Newcastle, Empangeni, and Ladysmith. Quite a big responsibility. They distribute food, particularly the breads and flours and all of that, right? I know. So it's like, which is the life diet of people in the country. So he's married to Subhadra Charan. He has 3 children. His current services, besides being Nodi Namahata leader, I don't know how he does it. He's involved in the Ratha Yatra Prasadam's preparation, which is like they are every night for those. Well, not just the 4 days, but weeks before that. He's involved in congregational preaching programs together with other devotees like Radhagiri, Braja Hari, and Padayatra. He's involved in the Sri Krishna Janmashtami program, Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja program, and organizational committees. He's personally cooking on those programs, and especially the children's program that we have for Sri Krishna Janmashtami. He's one of the persons in the organization. So, thank you for helping us. And we have Sunil Mohan Prabhu, who's next to Rupa Vilas Prabhu. He's a disciple of His Holiness Bhakti Swami Maharaj. He's married to Hemangi Devi Das. He has 2 devotees, 2 daughters who are devotees. He's a medical doctor since 1986, but he specialized. And in the course of his trajectory, he was a registrar at University of Natal, and he specialized medical school department of, and this is like a tongue twister, otorhinolaryngology. Is that right? And head and neck surgery from 1989 to 1992, and he has his fellowship in the same field. He was a consultant in this department at Addington Hospital, King Edward Hospital. Quite prestigious, lot of accolades, and he is involved in numerous publications in the ENT sector, and also landmark publications on the intracranial complications in sinusitis. This reminds me of it comes to you. And he began his private practice at Parkland's Hospital as a private ENT and head and neck surgeon in Old Port. Being the chairman of the private academic program of the South African Society of Otorhinolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery up to 2015, being the exco on the same committee, and he was also the president of the South African Society of Otorhinolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery up to 2018, and he's currently in practice as an ENT. So let's welcome. We have Radha Prema Balaji, who's a disciple of His Holiness Lokanath Swami Maharaj, and she's involved in a lot of services for Gurudev, editing, service for his books, and the articles that Maharaj writes, etc. She is currently an honorary prophet, UKZN, being a senior professor for a number of years at UKZN, and in the humanities and education in general. And I have the privilege and honor of her being my own supervisor in my postgraduate studies. She was also the deputy dean of the newly merged education faculty at Asian campus. She's written numerous articles, very well published in academic journals, and has presented and traveled to international and national and international conferences across the globe. Under her academic tutelage, she has graduated more than 27 masters and doctoral students. So that's quite a high number for her and for the country. And on the sports side, would you believe it? She has completed 10 Comrades marathons. Takes part in many of the provincial marathons that we see on the road. A lot of energy for that. She was also director of Food for Life for several years, and still involved in the consultancy for Food for Life. And she has 2 sons, a daughter, and 3 grandsons. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki, Shri Prabhupada Ki. So it's my honor to present to you these devotees who have outstanding careers in the material world, as well as involved in a lot of service in the temple. And I'd like to begin by asking Surabhi. Surabhi, I just want to know a little bit, when you were working, can you just tell us a little bit about it, that study and work? What did it really entail? What were you doing?
So I studied computer science. That's a lot of programming. Basically just programming different systems. And when I worked, it was, Durufco is actually not a very bona fide company. But I wasn't directly involved in what they do, but they basically make online gambling games. So my team wasn't directly involved, but still like that's the company. So I knew I wasn't going to work there forever. But it was just programming pretty much. And you mean like just work?
So that means a lot of like logic and thinking and analytical thinking, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So she's quite an analytical thinker. And then, in the course of your years, did you develop an interest in Krishna consciousness before that, during that, after that?
I think it became serious during work. I mean, I was coming to the temple before that, but I got really interested after starting work. I think that was like a spur also, because we faced with many challenges, and then we find that the only shelter is in our spiritual life.
Thank you. So we're going to expand that a little bit. Let's hand that over to Sunil Mahaprabhu. I'll go randomly in the committee, so no very strict order, alphabetical order, or anything like that. So, yeah. So, Imran, would you like to tell us a little bit about your work and also how you came to this point?
I'm convinced that nothing happens by chance, and my introduction to Krishna consciousness was I'm convinced was part of that. When I finished the trick, I was prepared medicine, but unfortunately I couldn't get a place in medical school. In those days, there were only 35 Indian students who were allowed in medical school, so I was out of there. So I happened to end up at the University of Durban, Westfield, as we called it in those days. And of course, we were students, what it is like students, scrounging around for something to eat. Then I noticed that these devotees used to come to the temple, and they should give something to eat, So at lunchtime, I said, well, I'll save my 50 cents and see here. And that's how I was introduced to Krishna consciousness. And of course, I used to go there regularly, try and be smart and ask some difficult questions. And His Holiness Parthasarati Swami Maharaj used to come, he used to get very irritated. And anyway, so then I qualified, I completed my PhD degree, and I got a place in the University of Town Medical School. And then I drifted away. And in the days when I was at the University of Durban, I should actually chant one round a day, And I remember how about my first service, so if you don't mind me expanding. So I went to and I said, he was offering those chanting beats. So I went to collect mine. And he says, no, you got to give 50 cents. So I collected that week, 50 cents. I got my first chanting beats. And I used to chant, I didn't know what it really meant, but they were very convincing in making us understand that chanting was the utmost, the ultimate. And then, of course, when I drifted away in medical school, then when I qualified, I of course, then got married, and I was followed. The first thing on my Krishna consciousness those days. And so I got married to Mangi. And then one day, a friend of mine came to visit us, and he was like, he was always drunk and everything, but he says, there's a Swami here in Durban, and then it all, the flashback came back, and I said, let me go meet the Swami. So I happened to rock up at Brahmana's house, and then I saw Jagadananda there. Obviously I knew him from medical school, and then he introduced me to His Holiness Bhakti Swami. And as I was saying, nothing happens by chance. And when I saw Bhakti Swami, I knew there was something special, and of course that's how I became a devotee.
Right, so that's quite a trajectory. So that prasadam and the chanting of one round and its effects.
Krishna never forgets you. Comes back, comes hunting you.
So thank you. I would hand that to Monica. Monica Mataji, obviously you didn't enter the world of work, or did you at all? When you left school? A little bit. Alright, so is that like a significant part you want to tell us about? No. Alright, so how significant in work? Krishna says, work for me. So that is what she did literally, right? She took it up seriously, worked for me. So tell us about that early days. You are from Wabidat. I know you made that point, when you spoke to me. So tell us about it and how you came.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. I can try and share a little bit on my Krishna Guru wants me to answer. So please bear with all my shortcomings. I joined the Hare Krishna movement through the inspiration and the guidance of His Holiness Parthasarati Das Goswami. Parthasarati Das Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. He was actually in Harinam in our street, and we had actually heard of some Hare Krishna devotee in the Prince Edward Street, where they had a little center there, and they were actually practicing and preaching to people about Krishna consciousness. So a week or two after, they started going to different areas in Harinam, and I must honestly admit I was attracted to Krishna consciousness first by by curiosity and then intelligence. And through His mercy, I'm actually here. Maybe I feel a little shy to say this, but actually joining the Harina party, all my sisters and myself and my neighbors all in our pajamas.
Pajama party on the street.
And he made at least 15 devotees there in a short space of like 1 month's time. And out of that 15, I would honestly say there is at least 10 of them still practicing sincerely.
And you're one of them, obviously. So, yeah, that's quite fascinating that you're that age, young child that you discovered. And prior to that, were you attracted to any spiritual practices or what were you thinking?
No, not at all, because our parents basically spoke a little bit about my interest. It was like a late-time study. But prior to that, we really didn't have intelligence in knowing anything about God or even if God existed today.
And then how did you pursue that interest after you got attracted to this Harinam?
Well, there was an hunting program every Sundays, and Pakistan does go so and as I told you, being very curious, we used to attend that program every Sunday. And due to all the knowledge that he gave us, we finally understood that it was a path that I actually wanted to choose.
Well done. Thank you so much. Let's pass the mic right to Rupa Vilas on that end. Rupa Vilas, you can also tell us, how did you really develop your interest in Krishna consciousness?
Hare Krishna. When I was a young boy, back in the days in Northland, these ones Maharaj used to hold programs at Southall. And I was about 5 or 6 years old at the time I should go accompany her. I was the police for her, so nobody else would feel it. So that's how I managed to go every Sunday. And then the bus used to come and we should go to Cambridge. So I went a few times.
Just tell us about Cambridge, because there are some young devotees here. What is Cambridge? What is it?
It was a farming community. I don't know much about Cambridge at that time. That was little. I knew there was a dam and somebody passed away, John. And yeah, it was a very nice place for kids to play around and stuff. That's what I was doing. And okay, because I was Thompson.
Only at that time.
Well, anyway, so there was various programs in Cambridge. And then this temple was built. And then there was no transport coming in. And then we went back to our normal lives. And then there was Bhakti Vivek. And so we started, in 1995, we started the Science of Self-Realization study source. Yeah. And that was a turning point, I think, of my first lessons to something else. And then we finished in 2 years with Jai Sajjanand. And that was it. After that, I started to get more involved in service, attend Mahats like Bhakti, started again. And over the years, through mentorship with all around Prabhu, Govindaji, I became more involved in Rath Yatra, more programs. That's how I developed. And then with that experience, somehow I was nominated to be the Mahat leader. And then through the guidance of the residents and yourself, and also through the Association for Devotees. So thank you very much.
Thanks for going with us. Yes, please feel free to applaud the devotees and give them the encouragement and appreciation of their involvement in Krishna consciousness. So, rather than I'd also, you were involved, I know, previously in spiritual, practices and so then suddenly you again ISKCON and quite involved in so many things. So please tell us how that happened. Yeah. Just before that, I didn't ask the nature of your work here and there. So if you could just tell us that, what you're doing at university and then come to us.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. I was for a long time a lecturer at the university while I've done the rest program, and then new case again, and then moved up to associate prof and then honorary prof now, and I work really involves supervision of students at master's and PhD level. Actually, I promoted over 30 masters and 27 PhDs.
Oh, I see. Sorry about that. So that's 57 students. Okay.
Yeah, that's just a boast moment. Yeah. So, yes, having been involved in another organization, I think it brought me up to the point of being a very pious individual, leading a very clean life, being good, being compassionate, being vegetarian. So, the difficulty was, and I had all of Prabhupada's books with me. My son was over 30, was named Vaishnava. So I actually extracted the name from Prabhupada's books. But because we involved in an existing organization, the transition from there to ISKCON was going to be extremely difficult at that point. And eventually, well, in 2004, I was busy with an international project on what we call social giving. And I read about ISKCON's Food for Life program globally. And the figures then were quite astronomical. 211 odd centers across the world, 60 different countries, with South Africa being one of them, serving almost 2 million plates of food daily. That translates into, I think, every 3 seconds a plate of food.
2 seconds.
Every 2 seconds a plate of food. So the social giving project then brought me, well, to the temple. I always used to the temple, but the specific aim to look at the Food for Life South Africa program. And it is then when I met Srivas Krishna Prabhu, who was then part of the directorship of Food for Life, and we started to talk about the actual work that was being done in Food for Life. But amongst other things, I could take his passion to a master's degree, and then pushed him on, and eventually he signed up and wrote a proposal looking at the enduring identities of Hare Krishna devotees beyond race, language, and culture. Yes. And eventually he graduated in 2005, summa cum laude, and that means over 80% for a master's thesis, and had the chance to actually promote the very same thesis to a PhD level. But he refused that offer and continued with the PhD program. Now, what was amazing about how I got to ISKCON, so the entire thesis, chapter for chapter, was just engaging me all the time. Because it was about the Hare Krishna movement, the history, it was about Srila Prabhupada, it was about the enduring identities of the very senior Maharajas who were here. I think he told me it was Jayadeva Swami, and then we had Devanrita Swami, Kadamba, and several others. So when you read their bio data and why they continue to be in ISKCON, it was a revelation. So chapter for chapter, Srila Krishna's thesis would be deeper and deeper into ISKCON. And of course there was lots of gardens and Mahaprasad. And then eventually, I think one day he got a bead bag for me and with beads in it and showed me how to chant. Of course I knew how to chant, not how mantra is the way we chant it now. And essentially that's how I started to also realize that we needed more than piety. Not just being pious and good and kind, but we needed more than that. We needed to be spiritual, we needed to find our way back home to our head. And ISKCON gave me that pathway.
Thank you. So, a very good teacher, very excellent supervisor. Thank you so much. I'd like to ask this. Srila Prabhupada says, in some of his purports, that one can remain where they are and render service. How does that translate into your lives? I'd like to think about it. I think I did send these questions to you to think about it. It's just a minute or two to think about it. Let's see. Sriman Prabhu, you want to respond?
Well, working the hours of doctor, got a few doctors here. Dr. Shani was the same profession as me, probably was harder than me. It occupies a significant amount of time in your day, and it sometimes can go late into the night. Great responsibility in terms of managing patients, and especially, I took private practice very soon after I qualified, and in private practice it's almost impossible
I'll give you an idea.
Yeah, I can manage it. So, you know, as my spiritual master always tells us, the first thing he tells you is that you got to put Krishna in the center of your life and work everything around it. And it's quite a difficult task, but the essence, of course, is the chanting and integrating your daily work around your chanting. So, you know, it fits into, you've got to fit into a routine in your day and try and do your chanting as much as possible. Invariably, you will have to do many rounds at the end of the day. And my motto was that you will not sleep until you finish your rounds. And sometimes you get quite late. And so integrating my daily routine like that is a way I try and make sense of it all. I think it was related to using your profession to serve Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, speak about that.
You know, devotees are constantly seeking medical attention, and that is where I fit in my assistance. I think it's very important to understand that you will be compassionate, empathetic, and understand that there are times when you will have to fit in the gap in terms of the medical care, and that's where I try and help as much as possible. Try and facilitate using my abilities to facilitate if it does not involve my speciality. And I think I developed a bit of a reputation trying to help devotees in that regard, and I'll continue to do that. And that is one of my missions. Say I'm using my profession to promote healthcare in devotees and be as helpful as possible.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, we know Swami's actually come to Durban to get assistance from Suni Mahaprabhu and a few other doctors that we had, and they were just, and I've seen them come, stay with Prabhu in his house and so on. So we'll talk about that a little later. Let's hand the mic to Surabi. Surabi, you made this decision now to give up your work, and while others are starting their careers and looking forward to building up their wealth and position and so on. So where do you see that with your life and your Krishna consciousness?
Well, when I was working, I made sure to try and dovetail that in Krishna consciousness also. And now that I'm taking this break, I still, I notice that whatever I'm doing, it's somehow in service. So when I was working, I'd take my friends to Govindas. There was always prasada distribution, or we'd take cakes and sweets for like the team. I was always like the person who would bring the prasada. And I distributed many books, like 300 books, just in the company over the time I was there. And some of my friends started chanting. I taught them how to chant, like during lunch breaks, and just different things like that. So that was very like direct. And then when I stopped working, I was traveling for a bit, staying at the temples and doing more temple type of service. It was more directly like for the deities, making gardens, helping with cooking and even dressing. So recently, so it's I see no difference, and I also don't see that okay, this career time is over. It's like I just took a break to absorb myself because I noticed like with a lot of my friends who were like more in the movement, they had like school holidays and university holidays to like really absorb themselves, but I wasn't like serious about Krishna consciousness during that time, so I kind of just, I feel like I wasted a lot of my youth. So then I said, okay, I want to actually absorb, just absorb in some way. So because I only like really started chanting when I was working. So and when you work, you don't get long holidays anymore. So I thought, okay, I don't know what it's like to stay at the temple, and I don't know what it's like to actually like run for Krishna. The temple devotees are always doing. So I wanted that more serious ways, like ways that take up more time.
Yeah.
Because I realized, like, for the way I want to live my life, like being very involved, spending a lot of my day just at work, and I don't think my body will handle that forever. So I thought of just having a lifestyle where I'm working less, earning less, living more simple, but having more time to serve. So I don't know if I'll never go back to work. I just know that if I do, and I'm sure I will, it's just it will be a different kind of work, maybe not corporate. Yeah. My mom knows this. It won't be corporate all the day. So company contracts, different phases of my life will be more involved work, and then less involved and more time in the temple and doing more service.
Well, it's quite noble and wonderful as a young person to have these goals already. So thank you for doing all of that service. I'd like to hand over to Rupa Vilas. And while we're doing that, it's a lot of the millennial generation seem to be floating between jobs and never fixed, etc. So for a devotee, I think that really works well. And if you see, yes, thank you. Rupa Vilas, in your own life at home now, you have your kids, you're married, you've got all of the service, you're working, Namahata leader, organizing things. So how does that Krishna consciousness actually translate in a practical way for you at home, perhaps?
When I was faced with problems like time management, I spoke to my senior God brothers, for example, Bhakti Prabhu gave me advice. Things got more hectic as you get more involved in yourselves. To balance that is very difficult. So I used to read a lot, still do. And in the beginning days of all the gurus and the devotees and starting these conversations, so I always fall back on that, thinking, reflecting on how they gave up their family lives or their careers and so forth for the benefit of this country and to develop this movement. So I always fall back on that teaching. Okay, I got problems. We all have problems. So if they had similar problems, how can I help that process? So mine is minute, because to leave your family, to start a movement, to surrender to a movement to somebody from another country, especially if an Indian boy, it's quite a task. You can't figure this out. My son won't leave home at school. It's difficult. But you find, like when you start reflecting, when you start reading and you look how deep these devotees, the time and the effort put into this movement, I also want to be part of it. So I make sure that everything is balanced. The kids got what they want, the wife is sorted, mom is sorted. And without time, we have a balance with the temple work. Yes, it comes from conflict, but you have to start to carry on because it's not going to move. If you don't do that, you fall. And then slowly you'll find that the rest of the family members also going to be going in different directions. You don't want that. We have the best movement. So in that way, that's how, it's difficult. It's also all interrelates, the reading, the chanting, association, all the devotees, all those things will help you. Because we borrow strength from each other. We may be down one day, we speak to another devotee, like we're doing kirtan just now, the devotees start to dance, they empower you. When you read at home, you get the rest of the family members reading and chanting, and it also helps. So like that, when you're in problems, and you start getting more involved in Krishna consciousness, Krishna Prabhupada will say that this is somehow pick up a page, just open a page and not together, slow down, and says that. So you reflect on that and you apply it in your daily life, and you manage your time. And if you keep doing this, it becomes a habit, good habit.
because you have your family is fully supportive. Bharat, your boys are here in Kirtan and so on, so we can see the training is taking place, and they are such wonderful little Vaishnavas too. So thank you, Bhagaras, for that. I'd say it's a realization, right? You know, being involved. I'd like to ask Malika to mention. Malika, when you joined, and then you were full-time in the temple, now, like your Vyasala is slightly different from those who are doing outside, because you're full-time, and you had a child who's a young man now. You know, then how did you manage that in a full-time context, in a family, being involved with so much service?
I think when you're in a temple situation, the lifestyle of the OG is a little different in terms of like dealing, I wouldn't use the word challenges, but dealing with what comes out of the in terms of actually doing your service. I think for me the most important thing was trying to prioritize my time to the most important things that I needed to do. Prioritizing my time in giving quality time to the family, quality time to my service, quality time for myself, and of course quality time thereafter to somebody else who came and needed help. Basically, in one sense, trying to maintain my own Krishna consciousness first, and then trying to help somebody else.
So what does that really mean when you say maintain your own Krishna consciousness first?
But actually, like if I may have to say, like in the beginning, Krishna consciousness, it was, I wouldn't use the word challenging again. It was difficult because when you are introduced to Krishna consciousness, it's really a different type of lifestyle which is coming out today. Like for me, maybe one or two of the difficulties was like you were suddenly, put into a room to stay with like maybe 10 Mahajis, and me coming from a very simple background with all the love and care and all the attention. You now have to live with a stranger in your room, not knowing who your room is. And secondly, you're also dealing with different natures of different people. But then as time went along, days went on, as weeks went by, as months went on, as years went by, it kind of gave me that realization of how Srila Prabhupada actually built a house in which the whole world could live. And a little realization was that, like wondering about how 10 people would just stay in one room, 15 girls, gave me a little appreciation of you have a little roof over here, so just appreciate that because there's somebody out there who doesn't have a place to stay and is sleeping on the street. So then again I saw Srila Prabhupada's mercy, how he tried to facilitate everybody under one roof and tried to make everyone happy in Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. So there's a challenging and society to be amongst the devotees.
Yes, because I think for me personally, it's like if you actually read the Prabhupada's books, you can see how he has facilitated for the kids, for the youngsters, for the elders, and then for us at the time of death. The philosophy is there, and it's simple for the simple, and difficult for the complicated. I must honestly admit, there was times that I also practiced the difficult for the complicated.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge, and every challenge is some achievement.
So tell us about, I'm particularly interested in how you manage having a child in this kind of context. How do you manage that? Because outside people have the facility, they have a little room maybe for the kid, they've got their own desk there, they facilitate their kids as best they can.
But there was a little anxiety, about actually having a family at the temple. But I must honestly admit that I was not the only one who really took care of the bush. We say it takes a village to raise a child. And again, my credit goes to Srila Prabhupada with all the devotees helping to raise Buddhist. So as a mother, I did my duty, and the father took turns at time to take care of the child. And then the father was doing his service, and I was taking care of the child. And I think with children living in a community, sometimes they get very, very busy and very occupied. They don't forget that they actually live in a community, and they kind of like love that.
Yes.
In the sense of just being with people and giving them attention and playing with them. And it was like you're growing up in Krishna consciousness. born in Krishna consciousness. So there's nothing else you have seen outside Krishna consciousness. And this, of course, you grow up to the age of 15 or 16, and then you kind of start experiencing life outside.
Yeah, communal life impacts upon one in such wonderful ways because, compared to the Western impersonalism, everybody's given us to be just lonely and independent. Has a devastating effect on all the social problems you're seeing. Thank you so much, Maria, for sharing that. Brother Brahmaji? You've had your kids, you brought them up, and then now you've got the grandparent role, and there's 3 grandkids there. So and I know you kind of absorb with them also, but at the same time you have a trajectory looking at your own spiritual aspirations, and then how does this work with you? If you're going to keep giving more and more attention to grandchildren, then where do you go in your own aspirations? How's that affecting? Sorry, did we lose the battery? Maybe it's off.
Hare Krishna. I think it's a kind of myth to believe that all of your children will just join ISKCON all of the time at the same pace. I think there's a harsh reality. Like Monica was saying, it's different and challenging living in the temple. So can you imagine the challenges outside, living outside the temple? So it's not easy, and I think they were at different paces, and I still struggle with it. But all I know is that Prabhupada and I, Gopinath, and I are the best examples that you can have in the home to emulate. And we continue with this fervently and a lot of prayer that is gradually bringing my children and grandchildren closer. I'm also very strategic. I've got a Marvel character that outdoes every one of the superheroes, and that's Lakshmi and Shringa in my home. So the dating is very attractive to the grandkids because they love the story of Hiranyakashipu and how Shringa gave her to the part and so on. So they love the idea of being protected, that Prahlad Maharaj is being protected by Shringa, and they also feel, we got a bit of Prahlad Maharaj in us, and we're going to be protected. So it's strategic to have that kind of dating in my home because he outdoes every one of those Marvel characters that they watch on TV. And so they're pretty convinced about that. I think my trajectory is to love Krishna. And I remember saying that when I met Srivas, and he said, "What is your qualification?" And so that's when I was like really gobsmacked, very frazzled with the question. You should know what my qualifications are. And essentially, I said to him, "I love Krishna." Well, that was like the humblest response I could get. But little did I realize that I knew very little about Krishna, except for some of the activities, some of them, the activities, very little. And I realized that to love someone, you're going to know just about everything about him, his name, his rupa, his lila. You need to know his activities, you need to know his 64 different qualities. How else can you love someone if you don't know all of that? How can you advocate someone? How can you be in awe of someone if you don't know all of that? So I think that's the trajectory I'm on. And Prabhupada has, I think he's beyond brilliance when he came to how to be systematic in our worship, in our devotional service, to get closer to the Lord and always remember Him and never forget Him. He gives you the recipe, day to day. I'm retired now, so it does help. It's the best position to be in because you have the flexibility then to move through the day as Prabhupada wanted from the morning chants. Well, I don't eat before I finish my rounds, so Srivas say he doesn't sleep before. But that's because I can do that. I'm at home, and by 9 o'clock after my first duties to finish with grandkids, there's enough time then to do the editing work that I do daily for my Guru Maharaj and any other gurus that require that service. And it's my qualification, my formal, that has helped me. I was just thinking of Surabi, the name Surabi, having helped my Guru Maharaj with a book called Bombay is My Office, and Surabi was the architect. He was so new, barely came into the room and introduced he was introduced to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, there's a table, gave him a sheet of paper and said, right, design the temple of Rasvihari, and that's beautiful. So, I mean, within minutes, Prabhupada could recognize the proclivities, the strengths of people. And so my meditating service all the years, I don't feel too mournful to have engaged with so much material, 27 PhDs, it's crazy. It's really chewing the chewed kind of idea. Spit it out and pick it up again, this critique, chew it, throw it out, and then student to student. In the last 5 years, I've tried to use students to work through, like Bhagavad Gita, looking at texts differently, even conflicting issues like violence in Gita, doing a PhD on that, because then Prabhupada's, as it is online, no other organization has that, and so they're compelled to read Prabhupada's works. And looking at more religious sort of and education kind of topics in the last 5 years. So, yeah, I think Prabhupada has provided us with this blueprint, and my advice, I think maybe that's your next question, is to the youth as well, to the whole congregation members, and to me, never to leave Prabhupada's ISKCON, always be at his feet, because he is probably the one that has allowed all of us the opportunity to get back in a way that is just so brilliant, it's so intelligent, it's just everything about it. It's just so organized. And yeah, that is the important thing. That if you want to always remember Krishna, never forget him, Prabhupada's feet is on all the time. Never, there's no other way, there's no other way, there is no other way.
I think from the outset you will understand when you're living a Grihastha lifestyle is that there's no individuals, it's teamwork. And if you're fortunate enough to have a close family, it's teamwork, there's no secrets, you rely on each other, it's extremely important to Krishna consciousness, because, and also the association with devotees is very important. Important to have programs at home, make certain that you come to the temple as a family, and that association is of utmost importance. You cannot underestimate that, as John Benamachi is alluding to. As far as the children is concerned, the onslaught from the material world, from Maya, is incredible. And as a team, you've got to work against it, especially your wife and yourself. You got to be on the ball, because, as you say, because the influences of the material world can overwhelm children very easily. They're impressionable ages. They're going to schools where Vedic culture is foreign, and you got to make sure that they understand and appreciate Prabhupada's teachings from a very young age. We are fortunate in our family that we had children after we became Krishna conscious, and that helped tremendously, because our children literally grew up in Krishna consciousness, and it made it a little bit easier, and the result of it is that we develop very good children, very good, strong understanding of Krishna consciousness, especially if they're like in the association of the Christian faith in the schools that we go to, where they're constantly berating Vedic culture, Eastern culture, and these children have to be equipped with be able to fight back and not to lose ground against it. And I can proudly say that we were reasonably successful in that, and our two girls have grown up very nicely in Krishna consciousness, and hopefully they will remain in Krishna consciousness and not leave ISKCON. I mean, that is, Bhakti Swami keeps on reminding us that never leave Krishna consciousness, no matter what happens, not leave the shelter of Srila Prabhupada's feet.
Thank you, Srivas. We are coming to the point of the art teachers now, so I want to get some final comments from you. One thing given the role that I'm playing as a host, so at the same time I have my own academic training, and sometimes my question may seem quite direct. But given your own status in society, being a doctor is prestigious, you have a particular amount of wealth and facility and so on. So sometimes you get the idea that only if you can accommodate and serve with your wealth and facilities, then only you can do proper service. And then, of course, you have facilitated the Maharajs, they stay at your home and so on. Is this like, what do you think of a statement like that?
Well, I think you've got to understand that wealth is relative. It's relative to what you have and what you want. Ultimately, you must understand that everything belongs to Krishna. And you're just been fortunate enough to be facilitated to receive so much more than, let's say, somebody else. And when you have something, and how you use it in Krishna's service is all that matters. And we often hear that people criticize, say, oh, it's only because you're wealthy that the spiritual masters or devotees come to you. I don't think that's actually the fact. They come to you because they know that you're using your wealth as such in the facility, and you must look at it as if you're using whatever you have in the spirit of Krishna consciousness, in Srila Prabhupada's movement, and in his I think Srila Prabhupada alluded to this many times when he was preaching in the West, that you've got to use what you have, what material facility you have to promote Krishna consciousness. So that's where I see it. And I don't think that there's anything special about me or anybody that well. I think that's where you're going to see it rationalized in that fashion.
Well, thank you for your humility, but I do know that you do a lot of service, just like all the devotees here in the panel, and many others are sitting in the audience, doing so many wonderful acts of service. So therefore we want to have this kind of focus. And while I'm here, I'm thinking that, there is this program called the Impact Theory, on YouTube, where they interview celebrities. So why don't we do that? I coined the term this morning, spiritual impact, for the name of the program. So I'm thinking about, if anybody has the ability to assist, I can think of one devotee, who can actually put this up as a website. And we should highlight. I don't mind doing the interview also, so that you can do it. Just interview devotees, and every day or every week have a new devotee from rank and file to anybody about their lives in Krishna consciousness. So you think that will be interesting to you? Yes? No? Haribol? Okay, I think we could do that. I'd like to conclude, and I see Lucy there. Hare Krishna. So Vimal Prabhu has nominated you to do the kirtan, so just remind you to get ready. From Rupa Vilas Guru, if you could focus on one aspect, I'll give you this mic now. If you could focus on one aspect of Srila Prabhupada that has impacted on you like tremendously, what would it be and why?
I would say it's the prasad.
That's like the service.
Yeah, maybe that's why I have a connection to the cooking team. But yeah, the prasad is love of this world, and nothing compares. So that would accompany with the reading. Just too much. I'm all going to read. I guess that is any function, any program you have, any time of the day, you need something to eat or snack. So maybe it's nice, it's a vegetable, that you can feel the taste, and that taste is actually Krishna. So that is the understanding. And we can change so many people just with food. They may not take to the teacher, they may not take to the kirtan, they may not take to my association, but if I give it some prasad,
The invisible weapon.
I'm not saying that, I'm just reiterating what Prabhupada said.
Well, we have an example in Srivas. attracted to the sun, to Krishna. Thank you. And Prabhupada gave very high standards, which is, what we have to maintain, even in the Sunday love feast and so on, since you are kind of involved there with the joy of Chaitanya Prabhu and later Chaitanya Prabhu. So, Srivas Prabhu, you respond and you come down this way. Yes.
Yeah, I suppose it's the prasad that attracted me. As I mentioned earlier on, when you're a student, it is just prasad. And of course, the other thing that struck me, when I had acquaintance of Bhakti Swami, and I don't know if some of you remember Surya Narayanas. I befriended Surya Narayanas in the early days, and he introduced me to His Holiness Bhakti Swami music. And so I was truly attracted by the music and the bhajans of Krishna, and then of course the holy name. And I went seeking, looking for, in those days, tapes and CDs, latest CDs of the holy name. And I suppose this is how it works. The constant association with the holy name is what attracts you, makes it sweeter and sweeter and sweeter, and you have no option but to succumb and surrender.
Thank you. So Srila Prabhupada introduced us to the holy name, and then has impacted you. Thanks, Prasad. And Prasad. Okay, right. Parallel streams.
Yeah, I think as I said before, it's the brilliance of the organization. It's based on intellectual concepts without us knowing it. It is for the intelligence, someone said to me, and we all are there. You don't have to be materially qualified. And it's all about sheer brilliance that attracted me in his writing, the system that he has put into place. So any question can be answered. I had to cut back on my rounds on the ground, and I had to increase my rounds on the beats. So it is chanting that has really attracted me, and I found that to be one of the simplest, most complicated ways of getting closer to any form of devotional service and love for Krishna. And of course, we struggle with chanting purely, chanting attentively, and chanting, hearing, and remembering the tough components of chanting, because your mind wanders. I think that's a very important aspect that has attracted me, is chant with purity.
Thank you. So, Ravi?
There's so many, but it has to be Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada brought Srimad Bhagavatam, and that changed my life, because when I read it, it was just the happiest 18 months, because I could just feel myself becoming more and more happy, just reading the verses themselves are just so pure, and then Prabhupada's purports are just so relishable. Like, he has so many different moods. Sometimes he's funny, sometimes he's just cutting, and sometimes he's like really, really like sweet, and sometimes he's just a total fan of Krishna. Like, he's always just saying how there's something maybe some activity may seem very difficult, but for Krishna it is not at all surprising. So he's just always glorifying Krishna, so that has to be the biggest life-changing thing, and that is why I have so much faith in the books, and that's why I do book distribution, because if they change my life, then of course they can change so many other people's lives. So yeah, books.
Thanks. Mother Malika?
Hare Krishna. I first became connected with Krishna consciousness by the holy name, and I pray that it will be the last thing that I also be connected in Krishna consciousness. And I just want to mention, I think we shouldn't be shy about inquiring anything about our spiritual life, because everything is there in the books which Srila Prabhupada has given us. If we read chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, we will see how Arjuna very submissively inquired, and through his inquiry, he actually did and followed Krishna's instruction, and he perfected his life. And also, if we look deeper, we will see all the sacrifices that Srila Prabhupada actually made for us. And as you dig deeper and deeper into Srila Prabhupada Gita, it can sometimes bring you to tears to see what Srila Prabhupada actually went through. To bring us here, sitting comfortably in this wonderful temple, looking at this beautiful deities, taking all the wonderful association devotees, having all this wonderful prasadam. And my conclusion that if it wasn't for Srila Prabhupada, we shouldn't have known, we would never know how to chant Hare Krishna, which is the perfection of our life. So for me, I just want to say that if we can seriously distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, and if we can seriously read Srila Prabhupada's books, and if we can seriously follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, we will perfect our life in the association of devotees. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Actually, I'm going to ask Monica Manji as the last person on the panel to give us some words of wisdom, way of advice. And she's done that so nicely, even without me asking. And I think that's the essence of our practice, is the holy name. And I have some questions on this panel, but I think it's been answered in the course of the discussion. But is there anybody in the audience who'd like to ask, comment, or state anything? Perhaps let's take one from the males, maybe. Not to create any upadis in terms of external designations, but those are seated on that side. Anybody with a question? Mataji's at the back. Okay, so let us then acknowledge the participation of all of these wonderful devotees who have given their time and come through. There's so much more I could ask, and there's so much more I wanted to ask, but we're limited by this time. So we